Asbestos is defined as a naturally occurring silicate mineral with long, thin, fibrous crystals. Although many would define asbestos as a poison, the word asbestos is derived from a Greek adjective meaning inextinguishable. The Greeks termed asbestos the miracle mineral because of its soft and pliant properties, as well as its ability to withstand intense heat. However, even the ancients already recognized certain hazards of the material, who noted that it damaged the lungs of slaves who wove it into cloth. In 1927, the medical and scientific community named a fatal disease from the very fiber itself: asbestosis.
Asbestos enters the body most frequently as an airborne fiber which the body has difficulty removing and reacts to.
The asbestos industry and corporations were clearly informed that asbestos was extremely harmful, not only in its raw fiber form, but also quite potent when incorporated into finished products used by the end consumer, such as brakes, joint compound, ceiling and floor tiles, roofing products, pumps, valves, and literally thousands of other products.
Asbestos as a material certainly has been researched in many papers over time, and certainly from the 1920s and 1930s it was well known that asbestos was a hazardous material that was harmful to human life and caused death.
In spite of its well-known health risks, asbestos became increasingly popular among manufacturers, and it became incorporated into literally thousands of products without warnings of its hazards, because it was cheaper than alternative asbestos-free materials.
Asbestos is most commonly breathed in as an airborne fiber and results in scarring of the chest wall, known as pleural plaquing or diffuse pleural thickening, scarring of the lung tissue, known as asbestosis, lung cancer, and/or cancer of the chest wall, known as mesothelioma.
The most significant and deadliest of these diseases is mesothelioma.
Mesothelioma is the most feared cancer that results from most commonly asbestos exposure. It involves the lining of the chest wall, the lining of the lung, the lining of the heart, or the lining of the abdominal cavity. Treatment consists of surgery, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and experimental treatments at this point.
It is this failure to warn workers of the dangers of asbestos that provides asbestos victims their legal right to seek justified compensation for the injuries and suffering.
Asbestos victims, especially mesothelioma victims, have the absolute right to be compensated. There are monies that have been set aside by companies, for example, to pay asbestos victims because they made the conscious decision to use asbestos instead of an asbestos-free substitute. And so, to be candid, there's no better example of a more legitimate lawsuit than a mesothelioma lawsuit in this country.
In many cases, people have contracted mesothelioma without even having direct exposure to asbestos.
There is no known safe level of asbestos exposure, and as a result, low levels of exposure to family members can result in their developing mesothelioma or other forms of asbestos disease.
Joe LaPointe was diagnosed with mesothelioma in 2005 after being exposed to asbestos throughout his career as a heating and cooling engineer.
We worked on boilers which were covered with asbestos, and through the time of my career, that was basically almost every day. There wasn't a day that we were not called on some of these boilers that had coverage with asbestos.
Since 1960, when it was universally accepted that mesothelioma is caused by asbestos exposure, there has been much progress within the medical community in the treatment of this deadly disease, but not without extreme consequences to the victims.
In August of 2005, my right lung was removed because of cancer. The heart sac was removed as well, and 2 ribs were removed, and the diaphragm, which was replaced by Gore-Tex.
The physical, emotional, and psychological impact that mesothelioma has on its victims cannot be overstated.
Anything that requires energy has been taken away from me, and I no longer can do what I used to do. My wife and I used to love dancing. Can't do that anymore.
In addition to dealing with the devastation of a mesothelioma diagnosis, the victim and family must also make the time-sensitive decision of contacting a law firm, such as the Deaton law firm, which handles asbestos cases nationwide, to pursue the remedies available.
It's important for a mesothelioma victim to contact an attorney as soon as possible after diagnosis, because it places the attorney in the best possible position to get the results that he or she can get, to get compensation for funding for the most recent clinical trials, medication, prescriptions. Also to document the asbestos exposure before that person becomes too ill, and give that mesothelioma victim peace of mind that the family will be taken care of financially.
Asbestos litigation has played a significant role in exposing asbestos companies.
A lawyer is simply a vehicle. A lawyer only files a lawsuit. It takes a person, a courageous person, when we're talking about mesothelioma victims, to make that decision, and to make the decision to file a lawsuit even when they're faced with the consequences of suffering an incurable disease. But it's through those courageous people that we've uncovered and learned the hazards of asbestos that the companies knew back in the late 1800s.
Well, the thing that bothers me more than anything else is the fact that they knew asbestos was harmful to your health before I was even born.
Bernie Roy was exposed to asbestos when he worked as a machinist in a Navy shipyard. Bernie passed away from mesothelioma, and his widow Sylvia wants asbestos companies to be held accountable.
Asbestos kills. Asbestos took my best friend away. Asbestos cut a life short that should not have been cut short. Asbestos is poison, and asbestos has got to go away.
Attorney Deaton claims that over 95% of mesothelioma cases settle prior to trial. But is the legal process that simple and straightforward?
Mr. Deaton came in after, well, I guess I forgot the exact time, but from that time on, he's been a peach. We get along well, and I recommend him completely.
The attorneys that we had handling our mesothelioma lawsuit, and in particular John and his paralegal team, really made it personal for us. I feel that they weren't just lawyers anymore, and even now, to this day, they were a real part of my life, and it's what they did for me and what they did for Bernie is something I'll never forget.
If you suffer from lung cancer, you're not going to go to a foot doctor. So if you have an asbestos lawsuit, you don't go to an attorney without the experience. And that decision is as critical sometimes as choosing the right doctor.
Both Sylvia and Joe want to raise public awareness for asbestos exposure and this potentially deadly disease.
I want people to know that if they've been involved in asbestos in any way, that they should have some sort of checkup. Definitely the one thing in my mind that shows up is a PET scan.
Reaching out to other people through the help of John's law firm and his paralegals helped me because I'm helping them. It's an opportunity for me to share my story. It's an opportunity for me to listen to other people's pain. It's an opportunity for me to give other people hope. It's also a chance for me to feel that Bernie's dying just was not in vain, that he made a difference.
To learn more, contact Deaton Law Firm today or visit DeatonLawFirm.com.